everybody, welcome again to Boyd+Swelbar Unvarnished. We're going to continue to use the varnish remover today. We'll try to be a little more gentle about it. It's kind of like kind of like a racetrack. If we use a little too much accelerator, we lose traction. We're going to try to keep traction today. So over to you, Bill. It's good to see you again.
Hey, great to see you.
Otto Preminger's office called. They're still not interested.
Anyway, Mike, good to see you too, man. So, a couple of people said last week, maybe we took Unvarnished a little too seriously. And I appreciate for some, maybe felt like we were pushing on you a little bit. And, yes and no. I mean, so what was interesting after hearing the comments, lo and behold, this article comes out in the Tuscaloosa News by a guy named Jason Morton. Did you see that, Mike?
Oh yeah, we did work with Tuscaloosa, and they mentioned in one of the articles that we had tried to help them many years ago. We did a SCSD application and a big push for the SCSD, but we told them if it ain't Delta to Atlanta, it ain't going to happen. And look at where we are today. It ain't Delta to Atlanta, but gee, we're going to get it regardless. Look, I saw it, and it's like almost sad. We've got to be honest with these communities. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And, as much as I want Tuscaloosa to get their air service, wow, I mean, Birmingham's having a hard time right now.
Yeah,
so,
50 minutes.
Yeah.
It's 50 minutes. I mean, like I use the example, people in Syosset, Long Island allow more time to get to LaGuardia. It's that argument. And again, it's just a shame that people aren't telling me you got great air service. It's called Birmingham. Work with those fine people. Yeah, I was looking at your LinkedIn page, and again, since I'm not big on LinkedIn, since they basically censored my comments on China, they wouldn't know China from a set of Melmac anyway. But that's another issue for another day. But I was very interested in that give and take with you and two other people in the industry, or I don't know which industry, 1950, 1960, but not today's industry, about basically, I was just amazed that I don't know what they were describing, that airlines, big airlines, if they're going to get slots, they should have to serve Ogdensburg. What is this all about? I mean, that thinking doesn't help us.
I mean, it was really interesting, the comments on, the op-ed I put in the Aviation Daily. And it was like the comments began, kind of EAS. Well, I didn't really say all EAS. I just said EAS should be part of the discussion if we're going to think about trying to rationalize, optimize the system. That's all. That's it. That's all. It wasn't just EAS. Well, and so that's kind of where we start. And, I don't know if it went downhill from there or, but the whole thing is I'm really happy that those two guys chimed in. I mean, I want that. I want to totally understand what the other side is thinking. And if that's where it is that we are, then we're going to kick the can down the road. I think you and I are of the view that the system is broken, and if we don't fix it now, it would be a shame.
I think just as importantly, if we don't stop monkeying with it, it's going to be a shame. Because you see, the assumption is that if Ogdensburg does not have scheduled passenger service, which by the way is serving Canadians, oh my God, they're going to get cut off from the world. It's like I just said, it's like Wake Island and the Japanese are coming. That's not what it's all about. Because a lot of this stuff, if we keep operating under these misconceptions that every small airport has to have air service, will be cut off from the world, those are not only not true, they're misleading. So I don't know. I read that and I thought, this is not one side versus another. This is a reality versus, some Twilight Zone galaxy somewhere else that doesn't even relate to what we're after. The market is going to take care of it. Take a look at this. Tuscaloosa, I will say this. The chances of getting air service that consumers will use, whether they can pay for it or not, are right up there with the second coming of Elvis. It's not going to happen. It's the same thing we've seen it in places like Laughlin. One flight a day it didn't work. Why? Because I can drive to Las Vegas sooner than I can get down to Laughlin, or down to Phoenix and make a connection. Why aren't we looking at it that way? But the consumer is looking at it that way. So fear not, the consumer is going to take care of this. And the other thing that you brought up is repurposing. That airport like a Tuscaloosa, what's down the street there is Mercedes. Now, auto factories don't generate a lot of air passenger traffic, but they generate corollary businesses, clustering around Mercedes. Look at that. So there's opportunities. It's not death.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And one of the things that has been frustrating, through this whole process is, about the consumer. And honestly, I think the airlines are finally talking about the consumer. I remember the day sitting in Chicago. United had just filed for bankruptcy. They presented a 267-page PowerPoint deck that didn't have the word consumer in it.
I saw the deck. They gave me an option of going to one of their board of directors' socials or looking at the deck. I looked at the deck and I forget the guy, wonderful guy, their finance guy. I said, are you trying to convince me or convince you?
Yeah. So, but anyway, I mean, the consumer's not there. And, the thing that we've been saying is if you're getting 5 or 6 flights a day, you've got a viable market. We're not talking about you. Right. I mean, what it is when you're thinking about 2 flights, 3 flights a day, that's who we're talking about. And the other thing is it's expensive for the airport to meet the regulations for those 2 flights to land.
There's a home run right there. The 139 issue. What does it cost to be a 139 airport through all the processes and want to keep it up, insurance, all the rest of the stuff, training people? If you didn't have to have that burden and could do things on a 135 basis, there's no question you could be probably more cost effective. But again, we have that misconception. And again, I've seen this peddled at airport after airport, year after year. And all we're getting is really just a lot of invoices. We're not getting anything because the consumer has made the decision. This is amazing to me.
It's time, we'll get ready to move on here in a minute, but I think maybe the next one, Mike, we sit down and really talk about economic impact studies, because we've got to rethink those too. I feel like there's a lot of double counting going on. I'm not sure, but I mean, we've got to rethink that a little bit.
Listen, we do them. We use implant. I don't care what you use. The fact is, if you look at implant, they literally will have a factor there for oil and mining. We had some clown in our office, no longer here, who actually did one and said, well, in Lebanon, New Hampshire, oil and mining will have X number of employees. I said, did you ever go to Lebanon, New Hampshire? The oil wells there are just amazing. But anyway, that's the problem we have. And what it's used for is a headline. And they're getting hosed with this stuff. We've done them, but we have to always say it's not totally accurate. XYZ East Cupcake is not generating $42 billion in economic impact. You only have 30 people in town. But anyway, I agree.
That's a good point. I mean, other than that, the play was great, Mrs. Lincoln. But so let's go under the wing here, and I'll just talk about what my 3 news things are for the week.
Okay.
I think it has been absolutely fascinating what it is that Avelo and Breeze have been doing to attract pilots. And man, you think about it, if I'm a big guy, I don't want them to get a lot of pilots, right? I mean, they're really being forced to go out there, be aggressive, increase pay scales. And I think Andrew Levy he's doing the right thing, because these pilots today want a different lifestyle than what it is that the pilots in 1995 we're looking for. So he's trying to address that. I want Andrew to be successful, but all that's going to mean is we're going to need even more pilots, because they're not going to be as productive as the pilot today is, right? The other one, and we were touching on this a couple of days ago, is JSX, running those EMB 145s, 135s, configured with 30 seats. Are they a competitor, Mike?
I don't know. I think like we've just talked about, there are all different kinds of consumers that use airports. The consumers that use American, United, Delta, Southwest are not the same consumers that are using Avelo or using Spirit. And the people using this JSX are probably a different clientele. I don't know what it is. Like I got the highest respect for David Neeleman, and he's looking at going after untapped personal travel. The people that cannot get to grandma's bar mitzvah, whatever, in Akron, because we live in Charleston, and it's a 3-day trip to get there. Now, I don't know. I don't have an answer to whether there's enough people to support a 30-seat jet of that caliber. There may be, but I don't know. It's a whole new vista.
Yeah, it is. And the Points Guy had an article on it, I think, and they were talking about Phoenix to Oakland, and the only competitors there are Frontier and Southwest, and so JSX is jumping in, is bringing a better seat to the marketplace, going to attract enough. I mean, I kind of hope so, but
I do too. But Beulah the Buzzer just went off on that one. The kind of people sitting on Southwest and the people that would go on a JSX are totally different clientele, totally different. And I believe so. And again, that totally different. They may be there in more numbers than JSX can ever think about handling, but it's not the same thing as people, lining up, in rows 45 to 50, Group B to get on Southwest Airlines. That's very different.
And then this week we get another upstart, right? Northern Pacific, Anchorage based. Okay. They want to run 757s across the North Pacific to, Tokyo, Seoul, Nagoya. I don't know. What do you make of that?
Well, since
they want to be the Iceland Air of the Pacific, by the way.
Well, since we've been doing work for Rob McKinney, I must be careful here. But okay. I think there are opportunities. I mean, now, again, those opportunities have to be after the gift that keeps on giving from Wuhan gets cleared up over there. That has to be done. But does it make sense conceptually? I think it can. Now, Alaska is very different than and in a lot of positive ways than Iceland. If you try to buy a hamburger in Reykjavik, but nevertheless, I mean, there are 2 roads in Alaska. Denali 3 days of the year you can see it. But I think there's some real opportunities there from that. But there are other issues happening. I think the concept's been validated by what Japan Airlines did. What do they call them? Zip Air. They've taken a couple 787s, high density did them, and really made them bundled. I mean, if you want a lie flat seat, you get a lie flat seat, but anything else you pay for, and it's all aimed at the Japanese traveler. They don't want you and me on that airplane because I can't understand the food they eat. I'd rather cook it. But nevertheless, I think there's something there, but right now there's some challenges out there that have to be looked at.
Yeah, I agree. And I just wonder, I mean, the Asia market's been so slow to come to, the lower cost carrier in the North Pacific anyway, not intra-Asia, but North Pacific. So we'll see. I mean, it's interesting. I wish them well. And then finally, I guess my last thing, and I don't know that it needs a lot of discussion, but you and I both are big fans of the A220, and Neeleman announced his first tranche of A220 flying this week, and that first class with 36 seats is pretty interesting.
Well, it's funny. I've had some interaction with Mr. Levy over there at Avella. What's really encouraging is he has a business plan, but it's not a sacred tome. In other words, if this doesn't work, I'm leaving. And the same thing with, I'll change it. Neeleman's the same thing. Take a look. We had, like I said, Akron to Charleston or Louisville to wherever. And now he's added a whole lot of stuff out of West Palm Beach. That's more traditional. And I think what we have is a very flexible airline. So I think they both can do very well. But that A220, be real careful of that 300. It can go Providence, Boston, and it can go Providence, Heathrow and make money. Well, Providence, Boston is a little iffy, but Providence, Buffalo. So that airplane is going to change a lot of things. I mean, our friends up in Bombardier, they hit a home run. They just really couldn't put a scorecard out.
Yeah. So anyway, man, I've drugged you under my wing. Why don't you go under your wing?
Okay, well, let's go this way. If you've seen, the EU, if we could put a musical score to it, the EU would be a great thing to do. Boris Johnson could be just, you know, a great, it'd be canceled in 13 weeks, but as a comedy act, he's it. But keep in mind, he just tore down all the COVID stuff in England. Ireland's doing it. Others are thinking about it. What does that mean? That means it's going to reopen, but I don't think it's going to reopen a lot of traffic, pretty leisure traffic across the Pacific, across the Atlantic rather. And you saw that where United has pulled down a lot of what they had planned for this summer in long haul flying. And they're smart. Again, watch Kirby, just watch what he does, because this man have a clue. This man really have a clue. So the fact is, I think Europe is going to open up, but it's not going to open up for US air traffic. The second thing is, if all of a sudden here in the US, I mean, Omicron, everybody's got it. If you haven't had Omicron, they won't let you in anymore to bars or things like that. You got to show, I've got it, you know, kind of like typhoid Mary. But the fact is, if that goes away and people are more willing to fly, and don't give me this crap that people are just excited about flying now. They're not. Put on a mask. You know, you look like either the Lone Ranger or a bank robber for 13 hours on an airplane. People don't want to fly. If that goes away, what can happen to personal travel, the stuff that Neeleman's after, where suddenly I can go, I'm going to go. Could there be a really nasty, if you want to call it that, spike in traffic should that go away? And the third thing is, we'll talk about this later, all these electric airplanes coming, aren't we excited? Electric taxis. Wow. Has anybody, yeah, and they say it's going to clean up the environment. No, it's not, because they're not replacing anything that's burning fossil fuel. And they thought these electric taxis, they'll be wonderful. Really? You know, this is not like getting in that old Crown Victoria and going from Flushing to up into the Upper West Side. You got to go from A to B. So I'm going to say somebody is going to get electronically electrocuted on these, or economically electrocuted, because I don't think they can play. And don't get me started on battery technology and the social issues there, because I think, you know, what Lincoln did, he'd be shocked to see how batteries are produced. So those are my.
So Mike, the only time I've been in a Crown Vic, it had red lights on top.
Yeah, that's right. In the back seat, you know, please watch your head as you get in.
I was in the back seat. Yeah.
I knew I shouldn't have had that last Manhattan. Damn it. But anyway, I'll leave it at that. So anyway, let's talk about data points. You've got some data points here. Some lovely,
I got 3 data points I want to
here.
throw up real quick.
Okay.
First of all, talk about oil a little bit. And man, you know, the one thing that the airlines hate is volatile oil prices. Well, if you think the market's volatile, oil prices have been exactly that. And what it is that I do hope, now that they've fallen, they fell 6% yesterday, there's 6% the day before. If you know, it only makes sense as we move into one of the historic strong booking periods, that I hope the airlines don't end up having to sell tickets at $75 oil and carry people at 90. Those economics just flat don't work. And also the chart that I was going to show is really nobody really knows what the supply is. I mean, that's what's confusing.
Well, yeah, what I understand too is one reason oil hasn't gone like gasoline is that we had a big downturn in Asia that didn't put the squeeze on Jet A prices, but that can change.
Yeah. The second slide going to show is schedule density. The concept of schedule density. It appears in the regional deck that sits on our website that we update every month. And the concept behind schedule density is what Mike and I are talking about. And if you take a look at the markets where the 50-seat jet and smaller provide at least 90% of the service to those airports, there are less than 2 frequencies a day, and there is an average of 1 hub. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about.
Agreed.
And it's a lot of airports. Well, it's a lot of airports.
Let me just jump in here. I think what people are missing also, I saw something that came out of the RAA. Now, when I was in the regional airline business, the RAA was your bulwark against ATA. We had 2 different industries. We don't have that now. So I don't know what RAA does. God love them, all the rest. But they came out and said 70% of the markets in the country are served by regional airlines. That is not technically true. I mean, SkyWest doesn't serve any place really. You know, neither do these others that are out Air Wisconsin. It's the major airlines that serve it with airplanes they lease in from various people, whether it be Air Wisconsin or whether it be ILFC or Air Lease. So to say that the regional airline industry is delivering it, major airlines are, and they have a set of equipment they're leasing in that may not be there 5 years from now.
Yeah.
I'm
But
thinking,
I'll tell you what, I mean, I love Faye Black. I mean, bless her heart. I mean, what a time to take over being president of RAA. Faye was an absolute soldier in trying to create alternative pathways to train pilots and that kind of thing. I mean, love her. And I mean, they're just dealt a tough set of cards here.
well,
SkyWest was trying to get into the business where they would do some non-contract flying that was their own at risk. And now they've got to park that at-risk flying so they can fulfill the contracts they have with American, United, and Delta,
right. I mean,
and in Alaska.
well,
Yeah.
the days of regional airlines, like when I was with Bar Harbor, that's over. Those airlines are over. That entire genre is over. And it was killed basically by the allowance of code sharing. Let's not go there right now. But an entire industry went away and was transformed into basic leasing companies. They do a great job. But we don't have an independent regional airline industry anymore in terms of marketing. And what this means is, you know, as economics change, we just don't need as many 750. We don't need as many 50-seat jets either. And
No,
that's
we
going to
don't.
be a real issue for these people, I'm afraid.
Yeah. And then my last chart was going to be from our good friend Jay Shabbat at Econ Weekly. And he did a ranking of the population growth by state through the pandemic. And the top 5 are absolutely amazing. And for a state to grow its population 1% or more is a lot. It's a big growth. And this happened in a year. This wasn't 5 years like normally. And right at the top of the list was Idaho. Anyway, the point is the top of the list here, think about where the air service is going. Then on 46 through 50, you have California, the District of Columbia, New York City, and you have, you know, you just have all these markets that are going to be slower to come back, but are where it is that the business traffic resides.
There's no question. Let me put up my data. Did this last time, but let me do it again. This is our projection of traffic growth 2025 versus 2019. What area is the fastest growth here, boys and girls? That's right, the Rocky Mountain region and the Deep South. That jobs exactly with Jay's numbers here, because this is where we see air passenger traffic growth growing because of that sort of thing. And this again, shameless plug, is from our Airports USA system. If you haven't subscribed, go on airportsusa.com. Nevertheless, this data clearly shows that we're going to have a different type of air transportation system because we have a different type of economy. Second slide here, went over this before, but I've updated it. This is a comparison between San Antonio and Austin. Now, when I was regional director for Braniff in San Antonio, we were bigger than Austin. Austin was one of my smaller stations. Today, take a look at what's happened there. They were almost even in 2003. You go up to 2025, we're projecting San Antonio is going to be about 5.5 million, and Austin's going to be 11 million. That has everything to do with economic moves. It has nothing to do with the airport. So you folks in San Antonio, stop running around and jumping in your water dish, for crying out loud. You're doing great. The fact is, those people north of you on I-35 are benefiting from an economic issue that you don't have right now and probably won't. That's what's happening in America. But like the previous slide, so just like Jay's numbers did, you know, the Mid-Atlantic region is really going to have less need for air transportation. This is not your father's air transportation system or your father's economy. End of rant.
End of rant. All right. Well, I mean, you've guided us beautifully into point counterpoint. What do you want to talk about?
Well, I think we had too many of these point counterpoints become point, and not a lot of counter. You know.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, the real, like I said, I think the U.S. airline industry is going to be looking at a new challenge in the next 5 years. See, I hear all this stuff about going green and going this and going that. And then along with that comes all this stuff about we're investing in an electric airplane manufacturer. Why? Why? And what are you going to use them for? I mean, is there really a need to fly from White Plains to LaGuardia? You know, those are the kind of things I think at some point in time, the US airline is going to have to rethink what I believe to be some of these trendy things that they're chasing because it makes good press. I'll just kind of put it down there. The second thing with that is, you know, this is what, 5 years ago, some guys walked into our office and they had this really stupid idea of a small supersonic airliner. And we've studied supersonic for Northrop and others. And they sat down, had all the answers. And I just looked this guy in the eye. I hate to tell you this, but this is not a fruitcake idea. You're onto something. That was boom. And they just got 60 million bucks from the government. You know, Mr. Blake Scholl's done a great job of that. So I'm saying I'm open to new technologies, but we got to look at where it comes from and what it'll accomplish.
Yeah. Mike, why would you name an airline Boom?
I don't know. That's kind of like my new airline, Trans Deficit. Be honest about it. I don't know. But
okay. Anyway,
I don't know. That's something else.
I digress. I digress.
Hey,
but
pal,
anyway,
he just got 60 million. Did you?
you know, one of the things that I know we're in general agreement on, and in the past, as we, you know, people think about air service, the word's been connectivity. Well, Allegiant, Avelo, they don't have connectivity for sale. They have access to the system for sale. And so, you know, I think about the communities out there, and where there's going to be a balance between how much connectivity do I have versus how much access do I have? Because the more access I have, the less passengers I have to flow over that connecting carrier's hub. And that means I'm probably going to lose that service. This is really going to be interesting going forward. I think it's very delicate because it's so easy to build something, and man, it takes no time at all when it starts coming down.
Access is everything. You know, businesses won't come to town because you got service from, you know, Fort Lauderdale to Concord. They're not going to come there. But the issue is, what kind of economic impact is that for the community? You can make the argument that if you're in a place that has Allegiant service taking people to Florida, you're losing economic impact because they're going down there to spend it on the beach. But
yeah,
it's air service. And I think we got to be very careful. You know, we have people out there saying it's the same thing. It's not. They're both good. But you got a point there. If you only have so many resources and you got our friends at Avelo or our friends at Spirit that want to take six out of your 12 gates, you got to make some determinations.
Yeah. So anyway, my favorite, you've got one job to do. All right. Well, this week, I read an article from Tom McLaughlin out of the Northwest Florida Daily News, where Okaloosa County Airport's director, Tracy Stage, was commenting on United pulling out of Fort Walton Beach. And he actually said it's going to open up much needed gate space. It's kind of what we're talking about here, you know, connectivity. I mean, he's got a lot of Allegiant service, right? And maybe connectivity isn't that important here, but that's an absolute example of what we're talking about from a regional perspective, because United still serves Panama City. They still serve, what is it, Northwest Beaches Airport, or, you know, Pensacola. I mean, you know, anyway, but, it's just this whole thing where I found that comment a little cavalier, but at the same time, maybe it is Allegiant there, and maybe that isn't where it is that United and American and Delta are going to hang out, or they may just be thinking, you know, I've got you, I'll serve you down the road.
Well, that's what we saw again. We saw at Lansing. That's what we saw at AZO, where, you know, United is still getting that service, and it's at a different terminal. That different terminal is Grand Rapids. So, you know, they really haven't lost anything there. You know, of course, you know, VPS is at some risk, if you will, if the economy turns down. That's all based upon leisure traffic. It's based upon discretionary dollars, but go for it when you can get it. So I agree. And I think we're looking at that happening around what already has happened around the country. Again,
yeah.
the people in
But it's
Muskegon who don't
happening
like
more
it.
and more.
Exactly. It's like embrace it. When we were working with Colorado Springs a few years ago, the idea was we wanted, Pueblo to come to the party. 2 flights a day, EAS is stupid when 40 minutes away, you have a whole passel of service, even more so now. And we had a couple of the city fathers interested. They were later shot, I think, for treason. But the fact is, we've got to have places like I said, like Pueblo, say, we got great air service. It's called Colorado Springs. And by the way, we've got a GA airport that'll knock your socks off. Let me show you Pueblo Municipal. That's what we have to do instead of saying, we got to have those 2 flights a day. And I'm sorry, there are too many Pied Pipers selling that crap to communities. And look at the track record where it hasn't worked. We can go down the list here. It hasn't worked because the consumer won't do it.
I may be wrong, but isn't that kind of what Naples did 20 years ago?
Yeah, we
kind
got
of remade itself when it lost commercial air service.
Well, actually not. It's only been in the last 5 years they've given into that.
Okay, my bad.
We responded to an RFP and we said, we can't get you scheduled service. But when you look at the GA inventory in that part of Florida, there's a huge, and they came back and this is wonderful. Come on down and talk to us. And while you're here, tell us how we can get scheduled service. And I said, did you read this? Again, listen, North Naples, again, we have a place there. It's 25 minutes from our garage to RSW, 25 minutes.
Yeah.
No hassles, no traffic. We've got to start looking at that. And that's happening around the country. But too often it's that old thing. We saw it with that exchange on your LinkedIn page, that any community that does not have scheduled passenger service at the local airport, we got to do something to make sure it has it, even if people won't use it. Welcome to the 1950s.
So before I let you talk about your one person, I want to do a shout out to 2. Behind me is one of my prized possessions in my office. It's called Swelbar. And Jim Evans in Knoxville sent this to me some time ago. And it's just I love it. I mean, all Vanna had to do was add 1 vowel and I'm named a bear. And I think it's a great thing. And then my second shout out is to my very good friend and former client, Greg Campbell at Shenandoah Valley. Greg is, he is leaving Shenandoah Valley to become the director of the Commonwealth of Virginia's Department of Aviation. They are blessed to have him. Greg is one of the most realistic human beings, and it fits absolutely into the conversation we're having right now. He is an EAS airport. He recognized that he was getting really unreliable service. His traffic was dying, took a risk, went without service for 7 months, finally got SkyWest in, blowing the doors off of it. And good for him. And it's because that area too is where folks in my neighborhood in Northern Virginia want to move. But there's a lot of activity there. But I just wanted to do a shout out to Greg. And the last thing is when he did a master plan, with 2 scenarios, one with commercial air service and one without. And I got to tell you, that to me is looking down the road and recognizing my place in the system. Congrats, Greg. Godspeed. Look forward to seeing what you do in Virginia.
All right, let me just to tag onto that. I don't think people realize the expertise and how much we rely on people like him who want to take jobs like that. Yes, it sounds great to be head of aeronautics or whatever it is for the state of Virginia. You gotta probably have to live in Richmond and put up with a lot of bureaucrats to help you and me have airports. So I would endorse what you just said. So
thank you.
Anyway, my little bit would be, just one little one. And again, I still don't understand this entire concept of you've got one job to do, but nevertheless, since I'm not into sports and stuff like that,
I've got to send you some YouTubes or something.
you got to send me something,
Something,
Anyway, the thing is, if you remember what 2 weeks ago, everyone is running around, jumping up and down about 5GC and how it's going to take airplanes out of the sky. And I don't deny that. Like I said, when Scott Kirby says it's a major issue, take this one to Vegas and bet it if you can. It's a major issue. But why are we waiting until 3 days before those ghastly ads that Verizon puts on TV that are disgusting? They're telling us about how great 5G is going to be. Man, I don't know about G from whatever, G string, whatever. Why did we have to wait till the last minute to go through all this stuff? If we knew this was coming, where's the advanced planning from the airline industry? And maybe they had it. Maybe they were working with it. But it seems to me there's nobody monitoring either one. And I really do think that this is a sort of a call to look to the future. What other technology we have coming down the line that may affect air transportation? Because this time, I think, I won't say we failed, but I think we have a big gap here when, it's going to come on Thursday and Monday. People say, oh, you can't do that. My altimeter won't work. So anyway, I'll just leave that one at that.
All good, man. I'm done.
Well, let me just say a couple other things. We appreciate you folks who've listened in. I don't know if this is shorter or longer, whatever. We'll try to hone this down a little bit more in the future. But if you want to join the our little uprising here, hey, give us a call. Let us know what you think. And also, again, for sponsoring, we're getting a lot of coverage here, if you will, and this coverage for more than just people that hang out on airliners.net. Let's talk about the future. We're talking about people that really care. So if you really are interested, let us know. We'd love to have you as a sponsor. We have a way of, showcasing you here. You won't get splattered too much with the varnish remover, but nevertheless, give us a call and we'll leave it at that.
Take care, man.
All right. Be good, sir. We'll talk later. And thanks again for everybody else.